Today in dollars and cents, whether you're looking for a new job or hoping for a raise, salary negotiations can be nerve-wracking.
But it is an important part of career advancement and success. Joining us to continue the conversation this morning is Davika Bridge, a career advancement expert and author of Thrive in Color, How to Master Self-Advocacy and Command Your Career as an Underrepresented Professional. Davika, I feel like this is something we've all had to come to terms with at least once in our lives. Talk about some of the common mistakes that professionals make during negotiations and how can they be avoided?
Absolutely. I love talking about negotiation because I think it's such a fundamental gap in the workplace. But look, a few different problems or challenges that most professionals experience is one, not actually leading the narrative of what you're seeking and what you want. We tend to use very high-level terms like promotion, higher compensation, access to leadership development training. What does that actually look like? What is that compensation you're asking for? What is that job role title that you're seeking? What is that actual training or conference that you want to be compensated from your workplace so you can attend? So really getting crystal clear. And then also another challenge is leaning into the tennis match. Negotiation is a back and forth. It can feel uncomfortable, especially for historically marginalized individuals. And a lot of us get intimidated by that process. And therefore, we often hear a no or not yet. And we just kind of, go back into our shell and hope for the best in the next conversation, which doesn't often happen in a consistent basis.
And one thing I've kind of pumped myself up with before when I've had to do this is you don't get what you don't ask for sometimes too. So you got to really lay it out there in pretty blatant terms. You also work with largely with underrepresented professionals, women, people of color, for example. Can you provide an example of how some cultural differences might also affect negotiation styles and outcomes?
Absolutely. When we think of how most people of color, first and second generation immigrants, women, those who are historically marginalized, when we think about making an ask or advocating for ourselves, it actually is a place of paralysis for a lot of individuals. We're taught not to over negotiate because you might lose the opportunity, to keep your head down and just be the best performer on your team, and the rewards and incentives will follow. But that's not how corporate America or the workplace in its entirety operates any longer. It's really important to master self-advocacy, know what you're asking for, create a case for what you're asking for using data and speaking the language of what matters to decision makers and leaders. But I think it's a fundamental gap that we need to talk more about and offer more training and education around those topics specifically.
So what strategies can underrepresented professionals use to overcome barriers in negotiations?
Absolutely. So if I can just highlight 3 steps that I want you to keep in mind if salary negotiation or negotiation as a whole is top of mind for you is 1, be very crystal clear about what you're asking for. So how does it actually look, right? So if it's a promotion, well, what does it actually mean? Is it a specific title? Is it moving to a different department? What does that promotion really look like for you? And then secondly, build options. So often when we're thinking about negotiation, we make an ask for that one thing. And if your leader can't give you what you're asking for and you get a no, generally that leads to what I call the 3D feelings: discontentment, defeat, and doubt. You feel like you don't belong in that place anymore. You'll generally move on to the next workplace that can give you what you're seeking. But if you present options, hey, this is my option A, this is my option B, and this is my option C. So if my option A is rejected and my leader can't give me that at this time, well, what is my option B? What do I go back to the table with and present so they can take that into consideration? Now, if that doesn't work, then there's option C that you keep in your back pocket. And I will say between presenting option A and C, there's at some point in that dialogue, you're getting something that is top of mind for you that will help you feel rewarded and incentivized. So don't just give the one option, have several options. And then the last step is really lean into the tennis match of what negotiation is. So that's why having options is really important. If you present your option A, there's pushback, it's okay. Go back into that tennis match with your option B and then back in with your option C and really set yourself up for success to actually receive a portion, if not all, of what you're asking for.
So how can organizations create a more equitable environment for those negotiations?
Well, we're seeing a lot of salary transparency right now, and that's a blessing, but it's also problematic because these ranges tend to be really large. So I think it's important to really lead in transparency of what each role's salary compensation range is. and also leave a safe space for employees to be able to have a compensation conversation without making them feel like they might lose an opportunity or they might lose their job. You know, these are actually fears that your employees have. So the more transparent you can be about information regarding compensation and salaries is great, but also just creating a safe space, a psychologically safe space where your employees can have conversations about money and not feel like they're being judged as a result of having those conversations with leaders.
Davika, I think I'm going to need to schedule a personal consultation with you.
Come on over.
Thank you so much for coming on. Such helpful tips.
Thank you for having me.